Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. I welcome once again to our wonderful show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It's a privilege and an honor to come to you again to discuss issues relating to entrepreneurship. And I have a wonderful guest for you. I have in the studio, our makeshift studio here in Black at Mogobe Plaza at the CBD. I have with me Mr. Tumelo Rannau, who is a tax consultant, who's also a representative of JCI International here in Botswana. I would like him to give a more elaborate and detailed introduction. Welcome to Black.
Thank you for hosting me, Mr. Mogobe. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, like you said, my name is Tumelo Rannau. I'm a tax practitioner, having practiced for the past 6 years. I've done practice in accounting firms, and I'm now in commerce and industry currently with AB and BEV, responsible for the Botswana and Namibia entities. Apart from just being a tax practitioner, I'm also an author, a blogger, and a columnist relating to tax issues. I have a columnist in the Weekend Post, Insightful, and I also blog on the Tax Platform, which is a blog that is on the platform WordPress, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Well, we're honored that you've responded positively to our invitation.
Thank you.
And we look forward to what you have to share. Can you tell the viewer what a tax practitioner is all about? What does that mean? Do you have to be, for instance, be an accountant?
Thank you. That's a good question. There are three elements or three categories when you talk of tax practitioners. Most of the time when you say to someone, I'm a tax practitioner, they think you work for the Botswana Unified Revenue Services, BES, because for them, when it comes to tax, that's all they can think about. But the first category is on the policy side of things and legislation. So the policy and legislation guys, they're the ones who prepare who draft legislation. They draft the acts, and then there's the enforcement side. The enforcement side, that's where now BES comes in. Whatever the Ministry of Finance policy advisors have prepared, then BES will enforce the law on tax and ensure that everyone that's supposed to follow that law follows it to the letter. Then the third category is the advisory side. The advisory side, that's where now the practitioner will be helping the taxpayers to comply with the tax law and ensure that they file everything that they're supposed to do on time, and whatever transaction they get into, is done on time or is done according to the law. And going to your question on whether you are supposed to be an accountant, not necessarily so. You can be a tax practitioner, whether you are a lawyer, an accountant, an economist. It just depends on whatever you have, because the most important thing is practice. You have to practice the trade for you to become a professional.
Tax is a very important subject, even going back to biblical times.
Yes.
I think there's a quotation ascribed to Jesus Christ himself where he says, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. He's really talking about taxation.
Yes.
And there's one scene where he gets his taxes paid from the mouth of a fish. So the tax has always been important, even in religion and symbolism. Now, getting back to Botswana, how important is tax, and how does it contribute not just to our GDP but to our, to government's coffers?
Yes.
How important is tax, and how much of what we spend comes from tax?
Yes,
in percentage terms.
That's an important question. Most of the government revenue, about 75% or so, comes from tax. BES currently collects around 4 billion every year, just from taxes. So tax is important because it funds the government development. So if the government wants to build a hospital, they want to build roads, they want to, whatever they want to construct, they get it from tax revenue. And of course, other revenue from.
So what percentage of the national cake is it? Do you know?
It's currently around 40%.
So it's very, very important.
It's very important.
Now, with that background, let's talk about employment opportunities that are available in the field to a tax practitioner. Can you tell us, in case someone out there, maybe a student, is debating what to get into, what would you say are the opportunities that are available in the field of tax practitioner?
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities. Earlier I mentioned that most people think it's just BES, because when you tell them I'm a tax practitioner, they said, oh, you work at BES. But firstly, on the policy side, you can work at Ministry of Finance, preparing the legislation draft. There's a unit there called the Tax Policy Unit. Those are the ones that deal with the preparation of the legislation. And it's also a secretariat of what we call the Board of Adjudicators, which is more like a tax court. So you can work there as
Is it an appeal or review body?
Yeah, it's a review body. When you are not satisfied with what the Commissioner General has assessed, you can go to that board and they listen to your grievances. So you can also work in private practice. So the private practice will have the law firm's side. You can work in a law firm as a tax advisor, or you can work in accounting firms as a tax consultant, or you can work in what we call industry, in private companies, where you can work in a certain company and advise them internally instead of just being an external consultant. And of course, you can work at BES, where also there are various portfolios you can work in, whether as an assessor or a technical advisor in that department.
Tell me, how does one actually become a tax practitioner? By that I mean, do you have to be certificated? Do you have to be accredited? How does it happen in Botswana?
Currently, there isn't an official certification for tax practitioners. But ideally, if you are from a legal background or an accounting background, you have to be part of BICA or the Law Society side for you to be a tax practitioner. So it's not really restricted. So if you have an economics degree, you can still be a tax advisor. And you can choose to either join BICA or just remain unaccredited by BICA. But it's always good to be accredited, because when you approach someone, you want to approach someone to show that I'm accredited, I can do this job well.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned, if I recall correctly, 3 categories of tax collectors. Yes. Where do you fall in, and what exactly is your specialty?
Yes, I fall in the advisory category. So the advisory category, like I said earlier, it's more about advising the client. Currently, like I said, I work for ABNBEV, responsible for the Botswana and Namibia entities, and I help them in complying, filing of tax returns, and doing advisory to ensure that wherever they have to maximize on the available legislation, they maximize, and also minimize the risk that there, to ensure that there are no exposures to the law such that there can be penalties or interest charges.
Do you also do private work?
At a minimal level, yes,
Okay.
because I'm currently engaged in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are what I'd like to call an intrapreneur as opposed to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You work within.
Within.
Okay. All right. That's
the
wonderful.
practice.
Now, there are some reports that suggest that your category contributes to financial crimes. What am I talking about? Right now, I hear that Botswana has been blacklisted by EU, or there's a threat of blacklisting. We've been given time to clear our book, and there's talk that there's millions of monies that go through Botswana, and we are facing all kinds of threats. And there's a butterfly case, which is all sort of in the media.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be 10 billion missing. So all this is happening around the area where you are active. Help the viewer understand what's really going on in your area, and how did we get to this situation as a country?
Yes. Well, I'll address the first one of that we contribute to this. Normally, when I talk about advisors, I try to give the picture of Jesus. Like you said earlier in the Bible, the history of taxation. he paid tax, and when Peter said, no, we're not supposed to pay tax, he said, no, go and get money in the mouth of a fish and pay. And also
Well, I suppose when you own the universe, it's not a problem. When you own the universe, it's not a problem to find the money.
Definitely. Then Peter had to pay tax. And also when the tax collector, Zacchaeus, came to Jesus, he says, collect what you are supposed to collect, not more than that. So we create a balance in the equation to say, as a taxpayer, pay what you are supposed to pay, and also as a tax collector, collect what you are supposed to collect. Don't collect more than what you're supposed to collect. And you also, as a taxpayer, don't pay more or don't pay less than what you are supposed to pay. So that's how we play in the industry. And going to the cases that are currently ongoing in Botswana, we also help in that respect to help them comply. And normally when we go into private practices, there are clauses that you get into with clients, such as non-compliance regulations, that if the client doesn't comply, you can report them to the relevant authorities, because in the private practice, what matters is reputation. So if you have a bad reputation, people won't go to you. In South Africa, there were some like KPMG issues. Back then, 10 years ago, Arthur and Anderson, they went under, then we no longer know them. Why? Because of reputation issues. So reputation in private practice is a very important aspect, and we cannot, as advisors, contribute to someone doing something that is illegal. So apart from just that, helping them comply, we are also on the education aspect. We do trainings, we write books, we write columns, because education, taxpayer education enhances compliance. If you are informed on something, you can do it better than when you are not informed. So we help them comply, and we help the enforcers and the policy drafters to ensure that more people comply to the tax law.
Is there any truth, or is it just a perception or a misperception that Botswana is a cesspool of money laundering and tax avoidance?
Unfortunately,
sorry, not avoidance.
Yes.
Because
Unfortunately, yes.
I think you'll talk about it later. Tax avoidance is okay.
Yes.
Tax evasion is not okay.
It's not okay. Yes. Well, there has been some lags, of course, in the law, and we've been trying to address that as a country, even before this EU blacklisting. So there's been an improvement. Blacklisting threat. So we've improved some laws, and we are still working on improving some things to ensure that there is no tax evasion that happens in the country. For the past 2 years, a law on transfer pricing was passed in Botswana to try to address that respect, because we've just been having general anti-avoidance regulations.
Well, you used a very
transfer
technical
pricing.
term, transfer pricing.
Yes.
The listener may not know what transfer pricing is. Can you just explain briefly?
Yeah, transfer pricing is shifting of profits. Normally, you shift profits from lower tax rates to higher, so that you push the expense there and you minimize your tax expense. So basically, that's transfer pricing.
Does it fall under tax avoidance or under tax evasion?
It depends on where you are sitting. When you are sitting, some will say it's evasion, some will say avoidance, and also it depends on the extent that you are doing it. If you are doing it within the confines of the law and the confines of the regulations that are available, then it can be an avoidance issue. But if you push it beyond the regulations and the guidances that are available, it can go in the evasion side. Okay,
just for the benefit of listeners again, what is the difference between evasion and avoidance? Tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Evasion is straightforward illegal. You are going over and above what is available in the law and doing something that is illegal. Normally in the act, they use the word artificial. Yes. While avoidance is you perfectly planning around with the available regulation to say, okay, regulation 123 says this. If I do 123, I will not pay such and such.
Do the two sometimes overlap, evasion and avoidance?
Yeah, sometimes there is a thin line between evasion and avoidance. That's when now you need someone who's an advisor.
Someone like yourself.
Yes, to help you ensure that you are on the avoidance side and not on the evasion side.
Now, what do businesses need to, why do they need to have a tax expert, whether it's internally or externally?
Yeah.
Why do you believe that a tax expert is necessary for most businesses nowadays?
Yes, taxation has become a bigger risk. And in the past 5 or so years, there's been a lot of tax evasion issues or tax risk issues, exposures, because of the issue of transfer pricing and just thin capitalization rules. Thin capitalization is where now you become aggressive on the interest side. You get loans from your related parties so that you can maximize the benefits of deducting the interest. So because of those issues, it has become a high risk, and you need someone who can advise you on how to minimize those risks. And even just compliance issues is a high risk. If you do not file a VAT return on time, or you don't file a corporate tax return on time, you get penalties, and you don't want
Those can be huge.
Yeah, and those can be huge, and your going concern can be threatened just because you
So
haven't
am I
filed a
right in
return.
saying that having a tax expert can make a difference between profit and loss for a company?
Definitely, it can. It can make a difference between profit and loss and you surviving
As a concern, as a business?
as a business.
Yeah. If we had more time, I would ask you really how we evaluate a good one. How will we tell that this one is good? For instance, if a listener, I'll just ask you the question. A listener out there says, I need to get a tax consultant or a tax expert. What are the things to look out for the good ones?
Yes. Like I said, a reputation is important. What's the reputation of that tax consultant? What's his experience? Who has they worked with? And how are they relating to the tax authorities? How are they relating to the Ministry of Finance? How are they relating to their clients? That is very much important. And what have you heard about them? Are they involved in trainings, ensuring that people are informed about tax issues, or you haven't heard of them in anyhow? You have to have heard about that person to say,
They
okay.
need to have a track record.
They need to have a track record.
So I guess you look for references and endorsements.
Definitely.
All right. You mentioned that you are an author, sir. You are a writer.
Yes.
Tell us about your writings. What books have you written?
Yes. I've written 2 books. The first one was released in April 2017. It's entitled Taxation of Not-for-Profit Organizations. So it's
NGOs.
Yes, I'll say NGOs, that's charities, churches, and educational institutions that are for the public. Yes, so it will help you.
Churches are immune to taxation.
And unfortunately, that's what people think. But there are there's income that for the churches that is exempt, and there is income that is taxable. For instance, your tithes, your offerings, your donations that are made to the churches, on the income tax side of things, they'll be exempt. But a church can have bookstore, it can rent out properties. That's what we call business income in taxation language. So that for that to be exempt, they have to apply to the Commissioner General for that to exempt. If they don't apply for the exemptions, it's automatically
So it's
gets
exempt,
taxed.
but it has to be applied
Yes,
for.
it has to be applied for. And in the following years, you have to explain why you have not used that cash if it's still sitting there.
Okay. Other books?
The second one is to be released on the 20th of July. It's called the Farmers Tax Handbook. It basically talks about taxation of farmers. Yes.
And you've, if I can shamelessly plug myself, you've asked me to write what? To ask
A forward.
A forward.
Yes, a forward to the book.
So look forward to that one, Farmers Tax Handbook. Now, so you have 2 books. What is inspiring you to keep writing?
It's to inform people and clear misconceptions. Yes, especially the issue of churches and other religious institutions and NGOs. People believe NGOs are not taxable, so they end up not registering for tax or filing of returns, even though they are registered. So it's to educate people about taxes, like for not-for-profit and also for farmers, to say this is how you do your taxes as a farmer.
There's something else I know about you, your involvement with JCI.
Yes.
Can you take a minute just to tell the viewer about JCI and how it has helped you embark on your current path?
Yes. JCI, Junior Chamber International Gaborone, of which I'm the current local president, has helped me a lot in terms of my public speaking skills. So when I joined JCI in 2017, I wasn't good in public speaking because I had a bad experience in the past. I had joined a debate team and I did horrible in that respect. I remember we were in Palape competing from Wayne College, and it was bad. So I had a fear of I had a fear of public speaking from that experience. So then when I came here, I found an organization that could help me in that respect. So JCI can help you in your personal development and in your leadership skills. I've learned tremendously about leadership in JCI, the challenges of leadership, on how you can address different situations as a leader.
Suppose the listener is hearing about JCI for the first time. Where do they go to get information, and where do they go to join?
Yes. They can search for us on Facebook, JCI Gaborone, and inquire about that, and we will respond to their requests. Yes, we meet here at Black at Mogobe Plaza.
Nonas as well?
Yes, and at Nonas. We meet fortnightly, and now because of COVID regulations, we've been meeting online.
Okay, all right. I want to go back to your books again, specifically about the Farmer's Handbook. What inspired you to write about the Farmer's Handbook? And I'm asking in the context of Botswana because we are farmers. I own a cattle post, and I'm sure everybody has something to do with a cattle post or a backyard garden or a team or somewhere.
Yes.
So why do you need a handbook is needed?
Yes. There's been a lot of talk about diversification of our economy, and agriculture or farming has been hailed as one of the mainstays that we can use to diversify.
And COVID has really underscored that.
Yes. And COVID had really pushed that agenda, and during the lockdown, there was more talk on that. We really need to diversify the economy, and people were saying agriculture. And I've had the idea of writing the book for the past 2 years, and I haven't been really able to crack it. So during lockdown, now I had inspiration to push it, to say, since now this has been driven, is being pushed, I think it's time now to contribute to the diversification debate, to say, okay, yes, we can go into farming, we can go into agriculture, but what are the tax issues, or what are the tax affairs that we need to address in the agricultural sector if I want to pursue entrepreneurship in agriculture? How to deal with a valuation of your cattle, or valuation of your crops, everything that is to do with taxation for farmers, what is deductible, what is not deductible. If you are an individual, what benefits are there? If you are a company, what benefits are there?
There's a perception that since we had our second president who ruled us for 18 years as a very, very ardent and very active farmer, the tax laws are very favorable towards farmers. Is this just a perception, or is it truth? And if so, in what way are they favorable, the tax laws, to farmers?
Well, it's not true, but I'll say the reason why the laws are favorable for farmers is that naturally farming, it's a capital-intensive activity. So if it's capital-intensive, the benefits have to be more. You have to entice people to get into farming. So one of the things government use to entice people to go into farming is through legislation, through tax policy. Yes, and that's where now the benefits come in.
So it's favorable.
It's favorable.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Apart from buying the books that you've written, apart from following your columns that you are writing, and apart from watching you on Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast, how can someone interested in you follow your work? I mentioned Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom because my intention is to call you as a resident tax expert, and I intend to invite you from time to time to talk about different tax areas of interest going forward. I think that invitation you've accepted.
I've accepted that.
Yes. But please answer that question.
Yes.
How people can follow you.
Yes. Apart from the books and the column, mostly you can follow the blog on Facebook, WordPress, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and we can engage. Can ask questions.
Yeah, you have to mention what it's called.
Yes, the blog is called the Tax Platform. It's there on Facebook, it's there on Twitter, LinkedIn, and WordPress.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so on WordPress you can subscribe through the email, and every time we post something there, you'll get a notification in the email. Yeah.
And do you plan on setting up your own practice fairly soon so that we can take more advantage of your skills?
Definitely soon I'll be going to the private practice and maximizing the benefits that are in there.
And when the time comes, please visit us to tell us where you are.
Yes, yeah, and when the time comes, you'll hear it from here for the first time.
Okay. Now, someone might be inspired by what you've said, and in our time together, I'd like you to look straight in the camera and talk to someone and share some word of inspiration, some parting words, some takeaway that they can go away with from you.
Yes. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this opportunity. All I can say to the viewers is that if you are passionate about something, pursue it. Pursue it, because if you do not pursue it, you won't be able to get what you want. You can have what you want, but the only way to have it is to pursue it.
And would you kindly ask them to subscribe to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom?
Yes, please like Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and get more insights on various entrepreneurship insights. Thank you.
It remains for me, dear listener, to thank you. We do our best to bring you impactful, inspiring and significant content. We want something that moves your soul, something that touches you, something that will inspire you to go and make a difference out there. So until the next time, this is your host, Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe, signing off.